Now, we'll start from the energy side. Of course, get interactive with us. We are live on all our social media handles, X Spaces, YouTube, Facebook, myjoyonline.com, and everywhere that you can watch us. Now, the energy sector is in focus this afternoon. Energy Minister John Jinapor is at the West African Gas Pipeline at WAPCO station in Tema this afternoon. This follows pressure to get the lights back on. He is there to inspect ongoing works on the shutdown pipelines, which is about 70% complete, as engineers race against time to complete the maintenance and restore full gas flow. Now, remember that they are doing this for the next 4 weeks, and it's nearly coming to an end. Now, speaking to journalists in Tema early on, Mr. Jinapor attributed the recent erratic power supply to a challenged energy sector inherited by the NDC administration.
Producing just enough to supply the demand. But because we have no reserves, even if one plant develops a slight problem, it leads to a challenge. But the engineers are able to move quickly to resolve it. And so you realize that even when we have a slight challenge, within a couple of hours, it is restored. But if we had the reserve, if we had a backup, when one plant goes down, another plant quickly takes over. But because of what we inherited and the poor and fragile nature of the electricity system that we inherited, today we simply have no reserve margin, not even 1 megawatt of reserve margin. So occasionally and periodically, as we go through this 1 month period, if one plant develops a slight challenge, then you have the challenge that you witness and what you are talking about. But I thank the engineers. Anytime there's a challenge, they quickly move in and try to restore the plant back. And so rest assured, we are doing everything we can to ensure that we have supply of power. We'll continue to hold the system. But after the pigging exercise, we're going to see a very much more improved delivery of electricity power. And we'll have the redundancy and the margins that we require. But as I said, we have to deal with the financial challenges, which is also critical.
Well, Mr. Jinapor has moved swiftly to implement sweeping reforms. One of his key strategies is the closure of multiple ECG accounts, a move aimed at streamlining revenue collection and ensuring the effectiveness of the waterfall mechanism, which redistributed funds across the energy value chain will help address the challenges facing the sector.
Every day we have office, banks, ECG contract. It's unsustainable. ECG 1.5 billion. No more keep 500.
That's emerging revenues.
Yes.
1.5 billion.
Yes.
Service providers are on our necks for their monies, but we cannot pay. ECG collect 1.5 billion cedis, but only declare 1 billion and keep 500 for expenses. That shouldn't be. Sometimes the money go to the app companies. I have written to them to close all accounts and not take any more loans because the cost of financing is too much.
Lies are Tony. Almost I do be a share middle name. So no na enrenian ton lies no. Na nipanaje 5%. We have to do something. That's a fact. And I'm determined to do something as minister. I may not get everything I want, but I am determined to do something. So I've written to them, said they should close all those accounts.
Well, while the minister is in Tema exploring solutions to the power crisis, electricity consumers in Kumasi, particularly the central business district of Adum, are increasingly relying on generators as power outages become the new norm. The Ashanti region for the past few weeks has been grappling with the intermittent power outages, leaving many businesses and residents scrambling for alternative source of power. The situation has become dire as many businesses, including banks, restaurants, and shops, have been forced to rely on gensets as generators to keep their operations running. And Wachi Yadom engaged traders who are complaining about the high cost of operating these generators amid the intermittent power shortages. And he came through with this report.
The Ashanti region is particularly hard hit by the recent power outages. The thriving streets of Kumasi, the regional capital, are now filled with a cacophony of generators, a stark reminder of the region's power woes.
For the past few weeks, major parts of the Ashanti region have been experiencing consistent or intermittent power cuts. And in the central business district, which is most affected, the traders have been forced to return to the use of generators. Today we took to the streets of the CBD to engage with traders who say that the return of these generators is a clear indication of doom so.
I have bought one generator and I have to get another one for my workplace. Times are hard.
You have last week, this week at Twaso. To me, make us say, Doomsana Nebano.
I believe this is the return of Doomso because the use of generators are on the rise. They should just give us a timetable, and that is better. At the CBD, the frequent power cuts have disrupted production, leading to losses for businesses and affecting the livelihoods of thousands of people. The power outages have also taken a toll on residents who are forced to endure the heat. Doomso has returned, but I believe John Mahama can solve it. The rising cost of fuel has made it challenging for people to afford the expenses of running these generators. ECG PRO for Ashanti West, Benjamin Enchi, says measures have been put in place to avert the outages.
I want to assure them that we are working assiduously to fix the problem, but we also need their help. So as we speak, yes, we intend to restore power to our cherished customers within the Doom businesses before close of day today.
He, however, complained about the consistent theft on ECG's electrical installations.
The stolen equipment have affected the 500 kVA transformer, and in view of that, we were unable to supply power supply to our cherished customers. What we are doing as a company is we are trying to put measures in place and rectify the issue to restore power supply to our cherished customers.
The Ashanti region is not the only part of the country affected by the power outages. However, the situation is particularly dire due to the region's high demand for power. For Joy News, Nana Bwachidankwe, Kumasi.
So let's ask some questions this afternoon because I mean we're going into the weekend. Today is Friday, and my expectation from the power sector is that I will have reliable power supply to enjoy my weekend, and I guess that goes for a lot of you out there. But in view of what we are hearing, there appears to be no certainty as to the guaranteed power supply that we expect. So are we going to take the explanation by the minister and then live our lives according to that? Joining us for more on this is the Executive Director of the Institute for Energy Security, Nana Amoesi. Nana Amoesi, good afternoon. Always a pleasure to have you here on the pulse. You've been listening to the Energy Minister. He is in Tema today, inspecting ongoing maintenance work on the WAPCO, gas lines. He says that we don't even have, we have no reserve, and for that reason, we just have to expect whatever that may come our way. Is that the same vibe you get?
Thanks for having me this afternoon, and good afternoon to your viewers. This is expected, as we indicated right from late last year, that of course we have a very delicate power system, and so any little glitch could generate doomsday for us. The last time this clean up issue came up, we're quite convinced in our mind that fuel issue would definitely bring about some level of doomsday. And for us, every doomsday is doomsday. It can be in the low profile doomsday or whatever. But we knew very well when we have issues with fuel supply, of course, your plants are going to struggle in generating power. Yes, of course, WAPCO has indicated to us that they're going to clean the pipeline, meaning that we are going to lose a chunk of the natural gas that we so much desire and require for our power plants. And that means that we have to fall on liquid fuel to compensate for the loss of natural gas because of the cleanup exercise. We know very well that liquid fuels are quite expensive. And so when you are procuring a very expensive fuel, you are mindful of how you use it. And so our suspicion is that government is trying to throttle or manage how it deploys the liquid fuel at its disposal to the power plants. Hence, at one point in time, you have some plants working and others are made idle for one or two reasons, and one of which you have mentioned, to reserve some fuel for the next day or the few weeks ahead of us. Seeing the energy minister visits the WAPCO, metering station should indicate to you the kind of, frustration or stress government is going through.
Right.
To put WAPCO to finish even before the deadline given, so as to make some savings for government and for the country. And so for us, we know it's a fuel supply issue, so much more than a plant availability issue.
Before WAPCO went offline, the minister spoke to the media, gave indication that government had put in plans to procure the necessary fuel to address the shortfall that WAPCO going offline was going to create. And for that reason, people shouldn't be too much afraid of what was to come. Now, it looks like that assurance is gone off the wind because you may have the fuel, but the plans probably are not there to help you sustain power supply. Beyond the fuel, are there something that we are missing here, Nana?
Well, I have just touched on the fuel, but even let's go further and discuss the fuel. Yes, government can give you an assurance that I've made plans for imports of liquid fuel. And it's one thing making the procurement, another for the vessel to come within the expected time. And also when the vessel arrives, let's note something here. The receiving facility offshore to contain the vessel, position them and start pumping to onshore, that facility receives fuel for both power plants and for the domestic, markets,
right,
where both the companies bring fuel for OMCs. When these vessels come, they have to struggle to get a space to come in. That's the laycan. Last week or last 2 weeks, many vessels will have to be halted to give room for this vessels that are coming for purpose of power generation. And we get the indication that there are some other vessels offshore waiting to come in and bring in fuel for power generation. Meanwhile, we need to match that with the demand for transportation and for other purposes that we need as a country. So both distribution companies are looking for laycan to bring in fuel for you and I to consume. For transportation, government is also looking for laycan to bring in fuel for power, supply reasons. And so that very challenge also exists. That makes it quite difficult for government to bring in the fuel as and when it wants, freely for the power plants. And so it still remains a fuel supply challenge more than a plant being down for maintenance reasons.
All right. So Nana, when the government took office, even before the swearing in, we had been told that the MPP administration left very limited resources for the procurement of fuel. We're even given hours before the situation could get worse. Now WAPCO went off, and then we are struggling to even keep the lights on. We appears not to have a handle as far as the energy sector is concerned. Looking at how potent it is for economic development, small glitch, and we have found wanting. Is it lack of investment? Because we thought that we had the plans. What was needed was to have the money to procure whatever gas or fuel to keep them running. But it looks like the slightest issue, then we are back to the Dumsor era.
Okay, so it's primarily a cash flow challenge, liquidity constraints. You just heard the minister recite saying that ECG first is unable to collect all the revenue expected, and the little that is collected, some of the funds are diverted. Meanwhile, when you look at the value chain, you will find the fuel supplier, you will find the generator, the transmitter of the power, and the distributor of the power, and other players. All these players within the value chain are expected to be reimbursed, or their contribution to the power generation and transmission, their quota has to be given to them. ECG, at the end of the value chain, has to collect all this cash, deposit it within the cash waterfall mechanism
Right.
for fair and equitable distribution. ECG is unable to do that. It means that all the utilities within the value chain are struggling for cash flow. And if that's happening, it's difficult for the fuel supplier to supply on time. It becomes difficult for the fuel transmitter WAPCO to transmit. You know, we owe WAPCO as we speak.
Right.
We owe almost all the power plants. That's also another challenge. And even the ECG is unable to retool its system because of inadequate cash flow. Same as RICO. And so it's cash flow that has brought us here. And we have to live it for a while. Live with it for a while. It's not going to go out with time soon.
But in view of the challenges and the fact that Ghanaians just want to see their lives on, which one should government tackle first as a matter of priority?
Well, every section of the value chain is critical and it's important. You need to touch on all the rest. You can't leave anyone out. But most importantly, we need to address the inefficiencies in the ECG, in particular, and probably also in NEPCO. NEPCO also is a small distributor up north. If we're able to collect the cash, if we're able to do our billing system right and raise enough for everybody's, for every player within the value chain to have a bit of that, they can sustain their business and we can be assured of power supply reliability. Beyond that, if we have money, the first thing we need to look at, solve the challenge with the IPPs we owe them and the power producers. When we clear some of their debts, I'm sure we'll escape the threats that comes to us once in a while. And we need to invest hugely in RICO, the transmission system, and also in ECG. Because you can solve the fuel supply issue, you can generate the power, but you have difficulty transmitting the power through RICO because of aging infrastructure. You have difficulty after you address RICO's issue in the ECG because they also have aging infrastructure which require huge investments. And so it becomes very critical that at this point, Ghana must invest hugely in this sector. Other than that, DUMSO will still stay with us for the rest of the year.
Then clearly we are very far away from saying that we have a reliable energy sector.
Until the elephant in the room is dealt with, until the issues in efficiency in the ECG is addressed, we'll keep on having DUMSO.
And when we hear stuff like, for example, ECG import equipments, it comes through the port, they are unable to clear it, you go through demurrage, and then it's auction for a peanut. ECG go and buy from the person who won the bid and pay thousands of dollars to take it. Then clearly there are structural issues that must be addressed.
This is a syndicated thievery. It is well planned, hatched, and executed. And so we expect the minister and the other handlers of the sector to pursue that case, investigate it to the latter, and ensure that everybody culpable within that stream is dealt with. And we must recover some of this money. And it's just a bit of the thing that we're seeing. There are other issues within the ECG that require serious attention. Other than that, we'll have issue. That's where we come to the point where others begin to, oppose privatization of ECG, and we wonder, do they really understand the issue? We believe that we need private sector participation in the ECG so that we can introduce the needed liquidity and funding to retool ECG system, introduce that efficiency, introduce technology, so that we can deal with the ECG once and for all. We are not saying they should sell ECG, but we can have private participation in the ECG. And when we do that, I'm sure it will solve some of the headache that we have today.
And before I let you go, so you can enjoy your weekend. I'm having a conversation with the newly appointed CEO of the Toyota Oil Refinery. What concerns does that the institute have as far as getting taught to run effectively are?
Well, we say welcome once again and congratulations, the MD of BOS, the MD of Temoyo Refinery, the DMD of Temoyo Refinery. We welcome them, and I'm sure they understand the challenge that's thrust on them. If we don't get Temoyo Refinery working, then of course we can't be so sure about our fuel supply security. It is very critical in the equation of fuel or energy security today. And so the expectation of them is to quickly look for partners that can support them bring the refinery back. We're praying that they put in the right structures so that the flame that we usually see in Tema every night gets up, and then business begins to boom. We pray and we wish them the best.
And thank you so much for your time this afternoon here on The Pulse. And of course, we're going to have a longer conversation around TOR, all the issues that are around it. We're going to put it to bear because the new CEO has been tasked to make the place work again. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have that conversation.